This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, miniatures, and paints, discount prices at miniaturemarket.com.
Hi everybody, welcome to this week's Painting 101. Today we are talking about primers, a question that we get asked so much. And finally we're here to give you the basics of priming and talk about the paint in general. How to prime, we're going to save that for next week's segment. Now this week we're going to kind of look at some of the different primers. There's so many different primers out there that even an advanced skilled painter will run into some bad primer. They change brands, they change things. You should always try to stick with a brand that works for you and something that you find is comfortable. Now I like Rust-Oleum. It's cheaper, okay? And if we're worried about cost, cheap is what we really want to do. But you got to make sure it says primer on it. It has to just say primer. There are some primers out there that will try to fool you, like the Valspar, that'll say paint and primer. And even the Rust-Oleums have a bunch of them that are paint and primer. These never dry correctly over my experience. You have a lot of problems with them. What you want to do is make sure that you get a good primer that also says it's good for plastics. That is key. You don't want to use an auto primer. I never use that, and it kind of makes it dry and chalky anyways, and we don't want that. We want a nice even coat on there. Now there's two different colors that you can get, or actually three, because you can get gray, but there's white, there's gray, and there's black. So why would you choose to prime in a certain color? Well, take like an elf for instance. If you wanted to paint an elf with bright colors, you don't want to paint them black, because when you put those colors over a black surface, it dulls the color down. And you can spend more time building it up to try to get it bright, but the problem with that is then you start to lose the detail of the model. And the essential here is to keep the detail of the model. Now I find that for things that are bright, I will prime white, or I will prime gray even in some instances, because I can always build out but not have to build out as much. For things that I really want, or take for instance like these Space Marines, these were primed black, and the reason for that was, as you can see, the green is really dulled down. It dulls it down, and then when you put a wash over that green, you really get that weathered look. And most of the things that I'm painting are weathered and worn down, such as tanks, or you would never paint a tank white, to be honest with you, especially one that's been out in service. It would be too bright and shiny tank. Well, you don't want that. You want weathered, you want worn down. But there's other things that are really bright, like certain spaceships. You would prime those white so that you get a nice glistening gleam. Metallics tend to take to black a little bit better, such as having black underneath and a lead belcher, which is a silver, go over, because the black underneath will dull down the silver. So when you put your next coat on it, say like a Rune Fang steel, now all of a sudden you have that detail where everything's battle worn, but because it's worn, you can see the inside part of the metal, which really shines out. Jewels and things like that, you want to have white so you can build outwards and make them bright and beautiful and stand out. There are just so many different combinations, and we're going to go over that when we show you when we prime something next week. And what we're going to do is put coat of paint on each figure. We're going to be painting a dwarf, and I believe let's go with something really bright like a an elf or something like that. I'll figure it out. But next week we're going to take 2 spectrums so you can see how the paint goes over. And if you really want to test it, get yourself a white piece of paper and a black magic marker. And put the black magic marker on one side, and then take a colored magic marker and run through it. Now, on the white side, you'll see how bright it stands out, whatever color it may be. Say it's a red. But when you run through the black, you'll see how the black, it dulls it down. Now all of a sudden you almost can't even see the red. Now because paint is of a different type of material, the red will do almost the same thing, where it'll go over and you'll need a couple of good coats on there to really bring it down. But what you'll have is a darkened red, where on the other side of the paper you'll have that bright white, which you'll be looking for. Now there are many companies that make primer, but if you want to be sure and dead on, you're going to want to get from a couple of the major companies. Army Builder, our friends here, Citadel, which now another thing is, if you have a certain model that has a very pronounced color, that Ultramarines, you can prime them in McCrag blue. Okay, that's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to go on and it acts like a primer, because this is a more expensive and more viable paint, unlike, you know, our friend Rust-Oleum, where you can get for $3 to $4. This is going to cost you anywhere from $12 to $15. And the gold paint for the Space Marines, like I have here, that I used, well, that is a whopping 18 to 20 bucks a can. So you can see where it'll be very expensive if you go with the better paints. Army Builder's reasonably priced. I think P3 makes one. They all make very good and solid and never fail primers that will always work for you. But let's face it, at those prices, you're better off taking a chance. And I found that the Rust-Oleum ×2 works really, really well if you can get your hands on it. And it works, and we're going to go over how to prime, so you're not standing there caking it on. There's good short bursts, and we're going to talk all about that next week when we prime these figures, and then we come back in and show how paint goes on. So I hope that clears up some of the questions that you may have about primers, and opens up maybe some more questions that you might have. But where are you going to ask those questions? Well, there's only one place, and that's right below in the comments. You may have some information you'd like to share with others that maybe I didn't catch, or maybe you have a question because of something I said that maybe it opened up another doorway for you. That's the beauty of Painting 101. We are going to do our best to help you come along and paint and color your world. Until next time, I'm Rob Warren. We'll see you soon.